Welcome into a special edition of the FutureSox podcast. My name is Elijah Evans, and I've got a really exciting interview lined up today. White Sox catching prospect Michael Turner is joining us. We're going to talk about a little bit of everything today. We're going to talk about the hot start in Birmingham, just how the vibes were down in the Double-A system. Michael's season, what he's up to right now, how he's been really getting hot lately, and then we're going to dive into a little bit about Hagen Smith, White Sox first rounder, who Michael played with a little bit in college at Arkansas. So we're super fired up to talk today. Just get a little bit of thoughts on everything from a guy who's now a second timer on the Future Sox podcast. So how you doing, Michael? Appreciate you coming on.
Good, man. I appreciate you having me again. Excited to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to talk. We're looking forward to it. It's gonna be fun. So we'll start here. Just how has this season been for you in Birmingham? Obviously, last year, you spent a lot of time in Winston, and then you got this was kind of your first taste of the Double A level. Obviously, it's known to be a big jump for guys when going from High A to Double A, especially in the Southern League. That's just a hard league to hit in general. Early in the season, you started kind of in a part time more role, but with Edgar Caro there, and then with Caro going up to Charlotte, you've kind of stepped into an everyday role now with the Barons. So how's this season kind of going for you?
Yeah, like you said, jump from A to Double A. I think I think it's a lot more developed. It's a lot uh, better, but I feel like last a lot of four-pitch walks. Like I wouldn't say you're at best. Yeah, I mean, like that I struggled. A lot of people say this about.
Sorry, man. I don't want to cut you off. My bad. Do you have AirPods by chance or any sort of earbuds? Do you mind throwing those in? I'll edit this out. Thank you.
You hear me better?
Yeah, it's a little clearer. Appreciate it. It was just a little
Okay.
choppy, a little bit
Okay.
here and there.
There
We'll
you
run back. We'll just. I'm just gonna start from a point of just start where you were. Just continue where you're going. I'll edit it all up.
go. Okay. But yeah, like I was
Sorry
saying,
about
I
that.
think the jumps all right from high to double A is pretty big. Like I was saying, the everybody's stuff in general is still really good, but it's in the zone more often, and they know how to get you to chase with two strikes. Versus in high, I feel like their stuff's still really good, but it's not as accurate. So it's easier to take that 0-2 pitch or 1-2 pitch. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, it. Not a lot of people know this, but at the end of spring training, I actually got banged up. I hurt my wrist, and I got to take the blame for that. I thought I was going to be okay. Took a couple days off and kind of rushed back into it. So once I got through about 100 at bats and I was struggling like I was, I'd never been through that before, so I didn't know if it was a
Yeah.
me thing or what. But I ended up testing my grip strength, and it was way down. So that's when I took a week off, got the cortisone shot, and starting to finally feel like myself again, getting that strength back. But yeah, like you were saying at the beginning, it was definitely a different role for me. Something I have to get used to if that's what they want out of me. Kind of like Kiro had four, I had two. It was just a different situation, not playing every day, so it was kind of something to adjust to. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I was starting to get comfortable with that. Then you got caught up, and I'm back to where I was last year. So it's exciting, and I'm just excited to get the second half kind of underway.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, man. I think at least from watching
Yeah.
some of your at bats, you didn't look necessarily as fully comfortable in some at bats as I
Mm,
remember you being last year. So, injuries, like whether, it plays a factor, whether you want it
yeah.
to make it, you don't want to make an excuse, obviously, but like it definitely
Yeah.
plays a factor and playing time, right? Like you've been a guy who played, throughout your college career and last year, right? You were an everyday catcher, right? So that's a
Hmm.
huge difference when you're shifting roles. And that's something that every player, right, has to go through to a degree when you're developing because
Yeah.
a lot of guys aren't going to be everyday major league players. That's just life, right? And that's
Mm.
wherever you are in the system is gonna vary. So how do you feel like you just said you hinted at this a little bit, but how do you feel kind of with in the last month now that you're catching more? Do you find yourself days where you're catching as opposed to just either DHing or something like that being a little bit more comfortable with the plate, or does it not affect you at all?
Yeah, I used to think that I was kind of a bad DH because I feel like when I'm catching that I'm so involved in the game that I think I'm more locked in. But I mean, as I get more comfortable with that DH role, I feel like that feeling's kind of going away. But yeah, I do feel like when I'm catching that I'm definitely more locked in. I feel like I see the ball better. There's just something to that helps with the visual approach, I think.
Yeah, do you think it's also partially like you're behind the plate, so you kind of have a really
Hmm.
good feel for the umpire too on that given day
Yeah,
when you also
yeah.
are catching?
for sure. I can usually tell after the first couple innings, like where his sweet spots are. Maybe he's calling that ball like a ball off on the outside corner or something like that.
Yeah.
So it definitely gives me an advantage when I'm hitting for sure.
Yeah, so playing with that Birmingham team, we'll talk about your catching a little bit. This rotation, like, started the year as an incredibly good rotation. It's still become incredibly good. I mean, even with guys getting promoted, like when Thorpe went up, and then now Eater and Bush are
Mm-hmm.
up in triple, right? Like it has remained impressive because Schultz joined, and then Schweitzer joined, and then now Gowan's. Like it's just it oozes pitching talent. What has it been like catching those guys, and what are some of the things that you really have taken away from being behind the dish for a lot of those pitchers?
It's super exciting, man. To have 1 through 6 like that, or even seven, to when they go out, it's going to be a close game, regardless. Of, say we scored two that day, we still have a chance to win. Especially early on when Thorpe was here, it was electric to watch. Even if I wasn't catching, man, he's an amazing dude with amazing stuff, and it's crazy to me how, say on a low strikeout day, they're still able to get so much soft contact. I think that's one of my favorite parts about it because I feel like, say something happens and they get a 4 pitch walk, it's like I'm not even worried because the chances of them getting a double play ball right here are like through the roof. So it's super exciting to be a part of and get to know these guys and just get more comfortable with them and know what they like to do in certain counts and stuff like that. It's super exciting.
Yeah. So from a catcher's perspective, what is it about guys like, I mean, Thorpe is like the key example because, now we're seeing it at the big league level where he doesn't have to, get a ton of whiffs to be successful, right?
hmm
What is it about guys like Thorpe or Mason Adams, even some of these, or even Kai Bush, right, that is able to force that soft contact from your perspective?
I think for me, it is the way. I don't know how to word this. I'm not a pitching coach, but the
Yeah.
way that they throw, like Thorpe, for example, his changeup, his release point, and the spin of the ball is so similar to what his four seam fastball looks like that it is almost impossible to tell when you're hitting. So, like, even if you sit on the changeup, it's still so because you're gonna think it's a fastball. It's such a like a it messes with your mind as a hitter for
Yeah.
sure. And Mason's another really good example of that. His curveball and slider, just the way that it comes out of his hand and the way that the ball rotates when those pitches are breaking is so similar to the way that
Yeah.
his fastball looks, and it just makes it really tough to hit, and it's fun to watch.
Yeah, it's late deception. I think that's part of what it
Yes.
is. It's the release point and the coming. It's all coming out the same, and then it's just dropping. And that's
hmm
why Thorpe's changeup is like metrically not crazy, but it
hmm
has such a unique movement profile to it while coming out of the exact same spot as the fastball that it's
Yep.
become, one of the better changeups in baseball, right?
hmm
So it's pretty fascinating stuff. What about some of the coaching staff there? Because obviously there was some turnover with Sergio Santos taking over there, and all the other guys that have kind of come into that Birmingham staff. How's it been working with Sergio and just the rest of that staff?
It's awesome, man. Serge he's a great guy. He's laid back, but he's super. His knowledge of the game is awesome, and if you have a question, he has the answer to it like every single time. So it's fun to be a part of. Mickey's a great guy, great hitting coach, man. He's fun to be around, keeps the vibes up all the time, and Rosie and Eli also the same way. Rosie, he puts in some serious work with the catchers, and I think it's helped me a lot for sure. And Eli as well. We're just steady building that. I was with him last year, but we're still building that relationship and just kind of starting to understand each other a little bit better and like what to throw in certain counts, certain guys, and it's definitely a good vibes down here for sure.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. It seems like it. It's been pretty evident. You talked defensively a little bit. Is there anything specifically, whether it be mechanically or just kind of your, logic behind the plate that you've been adjusting throughout the season?
A little bit. I would say that my main focus going into this year was I wanted to improve my receiving a little bit. But when you talk about the numbers, I just think it's starting to get to know the pitchers a little bit better and
Yeah.
not only what their best pitch is, but how it plays in certain counts is something that
Yeah.
I'm really kind of trying to take a deep dive into and trying to get to know these guys better. And it's starting to work out pretty well.
Yeah, it's cool to see that progression too, because guys
hmm
like you and Edgar, right, like are progressing with these pitchers, right? So it's
hmm
like you're able to learn them as they evolve too. You're evolving with them almost, right? Which is that cool
Yes.
dynamic of having a lot of prospects in one place at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, so we'll getting into the other side of things a little bit, totally unrelated to what you've been doing this year.
hmm
Hagen Smith is a guy you played with a little in college. You tweeted out a pretty cool video right when he got drafted. It was definitely a surprise draft pick. I think because of all this pitching depth we're talking about, a lot of White Sox fans were expecting a hitter, but like I think that Hagen's talent was something that it was hard to pass on, right? And I think when it
Yeah.
came to the White Sox pick, it became evident that they just went with the guy that they truly believe is going to be the best Major League Baseball player.
hmm
Sometimes it's that simple almost. What makes Hagen Smith so special? I'll start there.
There's a lot to it, man. Like the last time I caught him, he was 18, and we were in the fall and the kid's throwing 97 from the left side and it's just electric. And I'm like, it was just a different level. That was when I was at Kent. So it was already a huge step up for me. And I'm like, this dude is 18 years old with the crazy stuff I've ever seen. Like, I don't know how he didn't get drafted out of high school, but he, he's changed a lot since then, man. I went back I go back in the fall every year. And to see him in the weight room now, he looks like a completely different person. He is a whole new beast. He is huge, not like in a strong way, like solid foundation. And one thing I always do before I head out to spring training is stand in for most of the arms, the bullpens there, just to kind of help the pitching coach see what the visuals look like as a hitter and kind of give him feedback. And Hagen was one of the last ones that I stood in for. And I told the pitching coach there, Matt Hobbs, I was like, hey, if he does that this year, he has a chance to be the first overall pick. Like it was that good. Like
Yeah.
it was the best stuff I've seen probably ever, and to this day, I still think it is. So yeah, I couldn't tell you how excited I was to see that happen, especially for him. And he's a great guy, super great, super good work ethic too, and I'm just excited to see what happens for him.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's exactly what we've heard from pretty much everybody we've talked to is just, how
Hmm.
much he's grown, but also just how much the combination of the raw talent
Yeah,
plus like the hard work and progression, right?
yeah.
Can you, from what you have seen and just what you know, can you tell me a little about the slider specifically? Because you mentioned the fastball. Obviously, the fastball,
Hmm.
touching 100 as a lefty is going to be nasty no matter what.
Yeah.
The slider is like it's just gross, and it's partly the angle I think, and partly just the way
Hmm.
he throws it. But what about that pitch do you think is just so whiff inducive?
Honestly, I haven't seen the numbers recently, but if I had to guess, just based on I watched a lot of the Arkansas games this year, and I would say that it's probably the spin rate and the
Yeah,
way that like you said, the deception of his arm. It's a funky delivery in a way, but
right.
it's his arm moves so fast that I don't know. I think it's the spin rate. I need to catch a bullpen for him and kind of give you a better
Yeah.
answer on that. But he throws it hard. He's pretty accurate with it as well, and it's spinning at a really high rate. So I mean, he had a lot of success with this year. I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, we'll get a chance to see him at some point.
Hmm.
You don't have to answer this in too much detail. If you obviously the team has their plans for him, they're going to take their time with him. Do you think like if you threw him in Birmingham right now with you guys, would he be like very competitive in games on the mound?
100%.
Yeah,
Not a single doubt in my mind. I've seen all I needed to see out of him. I mean, he's throwing anywhere from 95 to 100 and with a wipeout slider changeup, or I think it's a split now. I'm not sure what the changeup is now, but I can promise you it would be effective right now, no doubt.
yeah, that sounds about right. I think that's pretty
Yeah.
much what we've been all thinking. I was thinking about, is there a possibility that he gets pushed to, Winston or
Hmm.
Birmingham right off the bat? And it's like, regardless of how they handle it, like he could handle that hypothetically,
Yes.
right? And there's
Yes.
scenarios where he definitely would be able to. Another guy I want to ask you about explicitly, we appreciate the info on Hagen because it's cool to get
Hmm.
kind of a direct opinion on it. Just this past weekend, I mentioned some of the other guys earlier, but I want to get on this guy specifically a little bit. You just caught Noah Schultz 2 days ago.
Hmm.
You've caught him a few other times this season. Schultz is a guy that like I guess I mean similar to Hagen, right? In some ways, right? Different pitchers, but they have
Hmm.
similar elements to that funky left-handed release, really long-limbed guys, right? What have you noticed from Noah that just has? If you did you catch him? I don't know. Did you catch him last year at some points?
Mm,
I don't think you did
man, I don't
much.
remember. And I don't think if I did, it
Yeah,
wasn't
but
much at all. Yeah.
yeah. So what have you seen from him in Birmingham that just shows you a guy that's continuing to really progress along his game?
He he's one of my best buddies on the team, and
Nice.
he's still super young,
Yeah.
and to see a talent like that at that age is, like I said, it's incredible. He does remind me a lot of Hagen, besides the fact that he's almost a foot taller than he is. But his sinker slider combination are always going to be good. Even on a day where he's like, my slider doesn't feel good today, I'm like, dude, you still got to throw it. Like it's that good. It's still better than most sliders. And this past outing, I don't know if he gave up a run. I don't think he did give up a run.
No. Yeah.
And I would say that was the best I've seen his slider this year. And the changeup is a pitch that not a lot of people talk about from him.
Right.
And I think that has taken the biggest step forward this year for him. It gets to a point where everybody, like, if you look at the scouting report, say he's 50-50 fastball slider. Like, it's a lot easier to sit on one of those two than it is if you throw in that third pitch. And I think
Yep.
that's something I talked to him about. I'm like, you need to trust the changeup more to start throwing it more and get comfortable with it. And I think that's going to benefit him in the long run for sure.
Yeah, that's exactly what a lot of people have been talking about. And myself, I've been kind of saying all year, like the fastball and slider are excellent pitches. Don't get me wrong,
Hmm.
but as a starting pitcher, like there is an importance to having a third thing you can go to mix it
Hmm.
up. And the changeup, I've never thought it's a bad pitch. I've always thought it's solid. It just
Hmm.
he's never had to use it much. But
Yeah.
now you're in Double A, and he's going to be in Triple A eventually, right? Like he's going to need at some point he's going to need to throw it more. And it's
Yeah.
good to see that you think it's developing in the right direction
Hmm.
for sure. The other thing with that slider, like he's throwing that slider for a strike. Like I want to say it's like 67% of the
Yeah.
time, which is like that's not a thing that happens. Like most guys,
No.
even with nasty sliders, you're usually seeing sliders at 60% tops, maybe
Yeah.
on a great slider, and he's above 60% in terms of strike
Hmm.
percentage on a slider, which is nuts, right?
Yeah. He's
So yeah,
he's I think I don't want to say this for him, but I would say he's most comfortable with that pitch. I feel like it's to a
yeah,
point where he can almost throw for a strike whenever he wants, and then he's really, really good at expanding it with two strikes. That's what makes him effective. So he can throw one in the zone to a righty, like a backdoorish look, and then he can bring it in 6 inches and make it hit him in the back foot. And it's almost always a swing and miss when he does that. So he's really, really effective with that pitch for sure.
yeah, 100%. That's great intel on all those pitchers for sure.
Hmm.
As you look into just the general future of the organization, right? Like between whether it's all these pitchers you mentioned, some of the guys you're playing with. Obviously, you played with a lot of guys this season that have whether it was
Hmm.
Brooks, who's now up with the big league team, Tim Elko just got promoted, Ramos obviously started in Birmingham. How do you feel about just the core of everybody that's in Birmingham, Charlotte, even down to Winston, right? Heading into the next year or two.
I think it's really exciting, man. I think it's either four or five, or what is it, four from Birmingham that have made the big leagues at some
Yeah,
point now.
I think so. Yeah,
And yeah, Tim's well on his way as well. So I mean, it's super exciting to be a part of. When I saw the roster come out for Birmingham, I called my dad and I
yeah,
was like, "Dad, we're loaded. This is awesome. Like it's going to be fun, man. Especially with our pitchers too. I think it's going to be a steady flow up there for this team. I really do. Building the relationship here and having the success we had in the first half,
yeah,
I think that was big for us, man. I really do. I think building that winning culture is going to start around this level and carrying
100%.
that up. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. I think there's a lot of value with, like I mentioned earlier, like growing together, right? It's not just
Hmm.
growing separately, but it's growing the core in not necessarily all in Birmingham, right? But just growing together and progressing through the minor leagues has a lot of value to it.
Yeah.
What do you see for the rest of the season, just for yourself in general? Like, what are some of the big things you really want to, strive to, whether it's just achieve or just kind of, improve upon in the next, you've got a month and a half left, in the minor league season.
For me, it's a few things. I want to get to understand these pitchers better. For example,
Yeah,
like Riley Goins, electric stuff as well. But I want to try to get to know him better, what he likes to do in certain counts, like I mentioned with the guys before. I got to get the bag on a little bit. I think once my hand finally gets strong again, I'll start coming around. But I this year I was more swing and miss than I was hoping I was going to be. And like I said, once I found out that strength was done in that hand and got that kind of taken care of, it's going down a little bit. But yeah, I just want to try to get those numbers up in a way for hitting, which sounds kind of like an eye thing, but I just didn't start off like I would or like I thought I should,
yeah,
and I think that figuring that out was a big thing for me. But yeah, from the catching aspect, it's just there's so many good arms here, and I want every single guy to be comfortable throwing to me. So the more I
yeah.
can catch them, the better it is, and it's going to be an exciting second half for sure.
Yeah, 100%. To give you some credit, it's been a good month of July, and you're definitely
Hmm.
building on where you were at. So I think with
Yeah.
that arm, the hand feeling good, it's
Hmm.
gonna keep coming for you, and you're gonna have if maybe you're not a great DH, but you're gonna be catching plenty, and you're gonna be
Yeah.
you're gonna be in the box doing your thing. So
Yeah.
we're looking forward to seeing it. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk with
Hmm.
us a little bit, and I'm fired up to see the rest of the season in Birmingham for you.
Yes, sir. Me too. Appreciate the time.
Thanks, man. Appreciate.